Right, this very short video that David and I are producing is just to give a bit of clarification as to what we're expecting for the second part of the assessment for this module, CI226, which is the essay that counts for 60% of the overall mark for the module. So I thought David and I would just sort of basically have a conversation about what we're expecting and sort of break down some of the criteria against which we're going to assess this. So hopefully it'll be helpful. Of course, any questions, problems you have, feel free to email either of us or come and chat to us during or after the lecture, and we'll be happy to help. So, first of all, it's something we covered in the first lecture that we did together for this module. And a couple of people asked the question, what do we mean by socio-technical perspective? Would you mind just going over that again? And,
I guess what we're getting at with the phrase socio-technical perspective is that systems succeed or fail for a variety of reasons, and some of those reasons will be technical reasons. They'll be to do with bad design or bad coding or bad programming, inappropriate programming, and so on. But often we find that systems fail for non-technical reasons, either to do with the culture of an organisation, the management of organisations, the way projects are specified and formulated, people not agreeing on objectives, or indeed not really understanding what the system is trying to achieve. So those sorts of factors we can broadly describe as social factors. Mm-hmm. So you can design the most brilliant technical piece of software, but if it's not doing what it's supposed to do in terms of the needs and objectives of an organisation, for example, it doesn't matter how good it is, it's still going to fail.
Right, and this is something I think that's been coming out of the seminar presentations that students have been doing.
That's right.
Technology, yes, as you said, technology doesn't always work, and sometimes that is the problem, but a lot of it seems to be the human element, perhaps, as a...
So the objective of the first piece of assessment that you've done, the analysis of a case study, was precisely to turn your minds, if we put it like that, towards understanding some of those other issues that come into why systems fail, because, as you all know, all the case studies that you've been doing are all failed systems in one way or another, or to a greater or lesser degree. And I think what comes out of those case studies is precisely a range of factors that lead to failure, and as we've seen, those can be failure to estimate costs appropriately, failures of management, failures of the commissioners of projects to fully specify what they want, or changing the specification partway through a project, or
hugely over-optimistic
expectations in terms of delivery times and costs and efficiency and effectiveness of systems and so on. So that's what we hope to have established with that first assessment, and that should lead you to an appreciation of just what we mean when we talk about socio-technical approaches.
Okay.
So in the second assessment, and if I can read the title, which is an essay, choose an example of an information systems design and implementation and analyse and evaluate it from a socio-technical perspective. So in the first assessment we gave you an example. What we're expecting in the second assessment is for you to choose your own appropriate example, and again analyse and evaluate why the system failed, or indeed why the system succeeded.
Well, okay, let me pick up on some of those, because we've got 5 criteria here, which is on the handout that outlines this module. So the first one is choice of an appropriate information system. So what do we mean by appropriate in the context of this module? What might be appropriate? What might not be appropriate?
I think we're looking for something which is on maybe the same scale as a number of the systems you've already looked at in the case studies.
Okay.
But I guess that's what it's appropriate in terms of scale, in terms of having sufficient information available in order to be able to analyse it.
Okay, so it's choosing a system where you can find enough information about what happened to write a 2,000-word essay.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be a big public sector project. I mean, it could be, but it doesn't have to be, does it?
Yeah, we focused on the public sector precisely because information is most easily available about some of these systems failures. But for your essay, the choice can be yours and is much wider.
Yeah. Okay.
But bear in mind the information.
Exactly. So it needs to be a project or a system rather where there is enough secondary information that you can get hold of and reference to sort of support what it is you're going to say.
Yeah. And I think also you need to think in terms of a life cycle. So you need enough information that will allow you to describe and analyse it from its inception maybe to its implementation. So you need, because unless you can see to some extent the outcomes, you can't really begin to evaluate the extent to which it might have succeeded or failed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, good. Second criteria we've got here, analysis of factors influencing design and implementation. So factors, what sort of factors are we thinking about there then? Is it what we've already discussed, or are we thinking about something different?
It's the kinds of factors that we've already discussed. So they can be, again, managerial, cultural. They can be to do with the specification of the project. Was it well specified or poorly specified? Did the commissioning organisation change its mind in any way about what they were trying to achieve? And when things started to go wrong, did the commissioning organisation ignore the fact that things were going wrong, or did the company that was building the system ignore the fact that things were going wrong? So it is that combination of an interaction between technical and social elements, I think.
Okay, good. Well, when building on from that, then the third criteria is this evaluate the reasons for the success or failure of the system. And I think this is important because we've been focusing on failure in the seminars, and it might be that the system that you've chosen to look at in the essay is also a failure, but it could be a success. It doesn't have to be a failure. So,
and what is important here is the question: what are the criteria for success and failure?
Yeah.
And I think looking at a system, the main criteria must relate to the objectives that the system was meant to achieve.
What did they want it to do in the first place?
What did they want it to do?
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't do what they wanted to do, then it has to be assessed.
Even if it does something very well, if it wasn't what they originally wanted it to do,
that's right.
It's not. Yeah.
So that's very important. You're measuring success and failure against what it was designed to do. Of course, there are other elements of success and failure. So it might actually do what it was designed to do, but it might have taken 5 years longer, as say the UK's air traffic control system did, or even longer than 5 years, I think, and be much over budget. So it might then technically be a success in terms of achieving its objectives. So we say tick tick, but there are still elements, unsatisfactory elements, or elements of failure, even given a certain level of success in terms of achieving objectives.
Yeah.
So it's not a straightforward thing necessarily to say, oh, it's a failure or a success, and there might be some elements of success and some elements of failure. So it's disentangling those and analysing the success and the failure of the system.
Yeah. Okay. Fourth point, coherence of the presentation of the case. So here I guess we're talking about how you presented your evidence, how you've discussed it,
Yeah.
whether you're drawing reasonable conclusions from the evidence that you've presented, basically whether it all makes sense, and it's sort of a logical presentation of facts and discussion. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. Well, I think we gave some guidance for the first assessment, which you could to some extent follow in writing the essay.
So these questions we've got here, what, why, when, who, where, could
Yeah.
be good guiding sort of.
Yeah. What happened? Why did it occur? Over what time period did it occur? Who were the major stakeholders? And so on. You could use those as...
Yeah. You don't have to follow that, and we're not saying you must use those headings in the essay, but as a sort of guide for thinking about how you're going to approach it, those questions could be useful. Okay.
And finally...
Fifth point?
Yeah.
Appropriate referencing. In many ways this is the simplest part, because referencing your sources that you mention in your essay is a fairly straightforward mechanical process. However, it's something, certainly I think in our experience over the years, that a lot of students do seem to struggle with. We use the Harvard method of referencing and citation here, as do most, or certainly a lot of universities. I think on Student Central I've put up either a guide or a link to a guide which explains very simply with examples how to use the Harvard method. So I recommend you have a look at that. Just why do we do that? Well, it's important that the evidence you're presenting is referenced. Where did it come from? Is it verifiable? Is it a good source? I guess so we can check if we want to where you got the information from. Is it?
That's right. So you have to do some research in terms of finding out the information which will answer some of those key questions about what happened and why did it occur and so on. And therefore it's very important for you to cite the sources and the authorities that you've used in order to provide that information. And
it will count, poor referencing and citation will, lower your marks. So it's not the most important thing, that, but it is an important factor in there, and getting it wrong will cost you in some marks. So.
And of course, accurate citation is one of the main safeguards against the charge of plagiarism. So,
absolutely.
Not that we're implying that you will necessarily be engaging in plagiarism, but it's a safeguard. If you're giving full and correct references for the information, then you're not making false claims that somehow you had this knowledge and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's good for that. Okay, anything else you want to add to any of that?
Just briefly to say, I guess, that you can view the extension, you can view the essay as an extension of what you were doing with your initial tutorial paper, but perhaps adding in more of the ideas that we will have delivered in the lectures, in terms of trying to understand what was going on in your particular case by applying some of those general concepts that we've introduced into in the lectures. So the main distinction between the essay and the original tutorial paper is the tutorial paper, in a sense, was very descriptive. What we're looking for in the essay is much more in terms of analysis and evaluation.
Yeah.
So a good essay will move through that spectrum from description to analysis, and hopefully in the conclusions some evidence-based evaluation.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'm just going to add one more thing actually on the referencing. The question that often comes up is how many references do I need to include in the essay? And there is no definite answer to that. I suppose I would say more than 3, less than 30. I don't know. It
as many as you need.
Yeah, as many as you need, I guess. But it's a 2,000-word essay, so you don't need hundreds. And when we say referencing, we're talking about all types of sources. So whether it's books, academic articles, newspaper articles, websites, anything where you have got information from that you are presenting in your essay needs referencing, so it covers all information sources. I think that's all I've got to say.
Yeah.
So good luck. Feel free to talk to us if you've got any questions, and that's it.